So today's is 1 hour. Yeah. Okay, so although we have introduced the nonlinear strain tensor, so from now onwards, I think we'll focus exclusively on linear elasticity. So basically, we introduced the nonlinear strain tensor because you should have an idea about what the correct strain tensor is. But in this course, at least, we will just use the linear approximation. So that means from now onwards, actually we will just use epsilon is equal to half of del u plus del u transpose. Okay, so we will just, so as I said that from now onwards, we will just use the linearized strain tensor. We will no longer deal with the nonlinear strain tensor. So now there is one complication that involves the strain tensor here. So let us talk about that, and that so-called complication is what is known as the compatibility relations here. So we'll discuss these compatibility relations today. So you can see that suppose if I give you the displacement components, right? So there are 3 displacement components, and then from that I will get the 6 strain components. That is because the strain tensor is symmetric. Right, so basically U has 3 components, and the epsilon has got 6 components, right? So so if you give me the displacement, then just by differentiating the displacement, I can get the strains. Okay, but now today we are going to consider the reverse problem. So the reverse problem is that suppose if I give you the strains, okay, then can I find out the displacements? Okay, so now you can see that actually there are going to be 6 equations for determining 3 components. Okay, so it's a so there are more number of equations than unknowns. Okay, and so that means so just if you are familiar with how to solve linear equations, right? You must have seen that if you have more number of equations than unknowns, then a solution will not exist unless the equations satisfy certain constraints between themselves, right? So we'll talk about those constraints. So in the same way, if I give you the strain components and if I ask you to find out the displacements, then the strain components have to satisfy certain constraints which are known as the compatibility relations. Okay, so if these compatibility relations are not satisfied, then you will not be able to find a single valued displacement corresponding to those particular strains. So these compatibility relations are extremely useful. Okay, and one has to check these compatibility relations if one starts by guessing the stress solution. So many times, what will happen is that especially we will see when we solve 2-dimensional problems, we will start with what is known as the Airy stress function, and so from there we will get the stress field. Okay, and the governing equation for the Airy stress function is actually obtained by imposing compatibility relation. So the point is that suppose if we arbitrarily guess some stress components, okay, then it is possible that there is no single valued displacement that corresponds to those stresses. Okay, so when will a single valued displacement field exist for a given stress state? So that is only when these compatibility relations that I am going to talk about today, when they are satisfied. So we will talk about compatibility. Compatibility. So given epsilon, single valued displacement field U exists if and only if the compatibility So let us now see what these compatibility equations are. So if I write this set of equations in initial notation, so that is half of u I comma j plus u j comma I. Okay. So this comma notation is used to denote differentiation. Okay, so this so basically this ui comma j is nothing but del ui by del xj. Okay, so that is what we mean by this comma notation. So we'll use this comma notation because it just simplifies the notation here. Fine. So if I now differentiate this ij with respect to kl, so epsilon ij comma kl, so that is equal to half of u I comma j kl plus u j comma I kl. Okay. And then similarly I can find epsilon kl comma ij. So all these I, J, K, L are free indices, right? Because there is no summation involved over any of these indices here. So this is half of U K comma L I J plus U L comma K I J. And then similarly, I can write the expressions for the other two, that is epsilon Lj comma Ki is equal to half of Uj comma Lik plus UL comma Jik, and epsilon Ki comma Lj is equal to half of Uk comma Ijl plus Ui comma Kjl. Okay, so I'm just forming these four tensors. Now you will see that if I now combine these four objects in a particular way, then the sum of those four objects is 0. So let us just write that. So epsilon Ij Kl comma Kl plus epsilon Kl comma Ij minus epsilon Lj comma Ki minus epsilon Ki comma Lj is equal to 0. So you can see now, so that is just if you just substitute. So for Ij comma Kl, you substitute this particular expression here and so on. Okay, so when you substitute all these expressions, you will see that the sum is equal to 0. So this is basically a set of 81 equations, okay, involving the strain components. But out of this, only 6 are actually independent here. So the set of 6 independent equations can be found by setting L is equal to K. So then the L or the K becomes a dummy index. Okay, so set L is equal to K. So set L is equal to K. Then in that case, what you will get is epsilon Ij comma Kk plus epsilon Kk comma Ij plus minus epsilon Ik comma Kj minus epsilon Jk comma Ki is equal to 0. So now you can see that this is a set of only 6 equations because of the symmetry, correct? So I equal to 1, 2, 3 and j is also equal to 1, 2, 3. But because epsilon ij is equal to epsilon ji, so actually it is only a set of 6 equations. So I mean it looks like these are 9 equations, because I and j are running from 1 to 3, but as I said that there is a symmetry in this, so that ij is equal to ji. So actually this is a set of only 6 equations. So basically these 81 equations will reduce to these 6 equations. So actually even if you write out these 81 equations, you will see that many of them are just repetitions of one another, or it is of the form 0 equal to 0, or whatever. So finally you will get only these 6 compatibility relations here. So all these 6 equations are independent of each other. Okay, so that means you cannot check only the first 3 compatibility relations and ignore the remaining 3 and things like that. So basically in any given situation we have to check all the 6 compatibility relations. So only when these 6 compatibility relations are satisfied, only then will a single value displacement field exist corresponding to these strain components here. So let us just write the compatibility relations for a Cartesian coordinate system. Okay, so for a Cartesian coordinate system, let us just write this. So the equations will look like this: del square epsilon xx by del y square plus del square epsilon yy by del x square is equal to del square gamma xy by del x del y. Now this gamma xy is what is known as the engineering strain. Okay, so this gamma xy is equal to 2 times epsilon xy, and similarly, so gamma yz will be 2 times epsilon yz. So these are the tensorial strains, shear strains, and these are the engineering shear strains. Okay, so the reason for bringing in these engineering strains and all that we will get into at a later stage, but this is how the first compatibility relation will look like. Then all you have to do is that wherever x occurs, you replace it by y. Wherever y occurs, you replace it by z, and so on. Okay, so then you will get the second compatibility relation. So del square epsilon yy by del z square plus del square epsilon zz by del y square is equal to del square gamma yz by del y del z, and del square epsilon zz by del x square plus del square epsilon xx by del z square is equal to del square gamma zx by del z del x. So this is a set of 3 compatibility relations, and then similarly now there are 3 others, so let us write those things also. So 2 times del square, just write it here, so 2 times del square epsilon xx by, so this is xx, by del y del z is equal to del by del x of minus del gamma yz by del x plus del gamma xz by del y plus del gamma xy by del z. So all these equations are there in the book. So even if you are not able to see these clearly, you can just take a look at the book, or you will find them in lots of other books also. So then similarly then the other 2 you get simply by interchanging, so in place of x put y, in place of y put z, and in place of z put x. And so again you will get that this is 2 times del square epsilon yy by del z del x is equal to del by del y of minus del gamma zx by del y plus del gamma yx by del z plus del gamma yz by del x. Okay. And so on. So this is 2 times now del square epsilon zz by del x del y is equal to del by del z of minus del gamma xy by del z plus del gamma zy by del x plus del gamma zx by del y. Okay, so you can just write it in this particular way. So these two are just obtained by permuting the indices. So that means x you change to y, and y you change to z, and z you change to x. So these are just obtained. So these are the 6 compatibility relations for the strain components expressed in a Cartesian coordinate system, right? So you have to check. So suppose if you are given some stress field. So in many problems, what we will do is that we will simply guess what the stress field looks like. Okay, and from that we will obtain the strain field. So now we have to check whether this guess, or whatever we are guessing for the strain field, whether that satisfies all these 6 compatibility conditions. Okay, and only when it satisfies these 6 compatibility conditions, only then will a single valued displacement field exist. So actually there are some additional complications, that actually the domain should be simply connected. If it is multiply connected means, roughly speaking, you can imagine a 2-dimensional domain with holes. So that is multiply connected. But we will not get into this simply connected and multiply connected at this particular stage. So at this particular stage, we will just consider simply connected. That means without any holes. And then these compatibility relations are good enough. So if you check these compatibility relations, then a single valued displacement field is ensured. Okay, so this. So let me just give you an example. So suppose if I guess, okay, so suppose if I guess that gamma xy, suppose gamma xy is equal to xy, suppose, okay, and all the remaining 0, okay, all remaining strain components 0, okay, components 0, okay. Suppose if I guess this as my strain field, then you will not be able to find a displacement field corresponding to this, because you will see. So suppose if I substitute this gamma xy equal to xy in this particular equation, right, then we have said that all the remaining strain components are 0. So from this you will see that this very first compatibility relation is violated, because here you will get 1 and here you will get 0, right. So if I take this as my strain field, then the first compatibility relation is violated, and if any of the compatibility relations are violated, that means there is no single valued displacement field corresponding to that particular strain state. If you are not convinced, you can try integrating. Okay, so what you do is that you take epsilon xx equal to 0, right, and that is del ux by del x. Then you can now write ux as equal to some function of y and z and so on. Okay, so you can try to actually find out the displacement components. You will see that you will get a conflict. Somewhere you will get a conflict. Okay, so that means basically the reason you will get a conflict is because these compatibility relations are violated here, right? The first compatibility relation is violated, and hence for that reason you will not get this. So basically let me just summarize when it is that you need to check compatibility. Okay, so if you are starting from a displacement solution, then you don't need to check for compatibility, because in that case you are first finding the displacements, right, and then from that you will find the strain. So that is not a problem, because you are simply differentiating the displacement field and finding the strains. But suppose if I guess either the stress field or the strain field, then I need to check for compatibility, because then in that case a single valued displacement field may not exist if your guess is wrong. Okay, so basically you need to check for compatibility whenever we are guessing. So we'll see lots and lots of examples of that as we go on. But at this stage, we will just note that this compatibility conditions are important when you want to check if there is a single value displacement field corresponding to a given strain field. Okay, then the next thing that we will discuss, so basically we want to set up a boundary value problem, right? Finally, see, we have already got the equations, right? Del dot tau plus rho b is equal to rho del square u by del t square, and epsilon is equal to half of del u plus del u transpose, right? But you will see that now you have 3 components for the displacement, then 6 components for the strain, and 6 components for the stress, right? So you have a total of 15 unknowns, right? But the number of equations that you have, so this is a vectorial equation, so these are 3 equations, and this is strain displacement relation. These are 6 equations because of the symmetry of the strain tensor. So 6 plus 3 is 9. So you still have 6 equations shortage, right? And so that is provided by the what is known as the constitutive relation, right? So because right now we have the nature of the material is still not there. So this is valid for any body, whether it is copper or steel. So where does the fact that we are dealing with copper or steel or aluminum, so where does that come in, right? So that comes in through what is known as the constitutive relation. Okay, so now we will talk about constitutive relations. So constitutive relation. So we will talk about what is known as the generalized Hooke's law. Generalized Hooke's law. So we have seen that, okay, in the 1D case, you must have, you know this, right? So this is your epsilon and this is your tau, and then the slope of that is your Young modulus. So this is the Hooke's law, right? That stress strain graph, the slope of that is given gives the Young modulus, right? So now we have to generalize that 1D Hooke's law to the case of 3D, right? So because now we are dealing with a 3-dimensional state of stress. Okay, so what we will do is that we will introduce this particular constitutive relation now,Cijkl epsilon kl. So this is probably the only place where we will introduce 4th order tensors. But again, we will not deal so much with 4th order tensors. We will try to simplify this so that finally we will get something very simple. But at this stage, at least we will start with this. So basically, this is like a 3 by 3 by 3 by 3 matrix. Okay, that is multiplying these 9 components to give you this. So for example, tau 11 will be equal to C11 KL times epsilon KL, right? And then so there is a summation over K and L. So this will involve 9 terms now. So say it will be C1111 epsilon 11 plus C1112 epsilon 12 and so on. Okay, so if you add them up, then it will be like 9 components. So see, the last one will be C1133 epsilon 33. Okay, so if you just go in that sequence here. So similarly you can write the equations for all the remaining components, but that doesn't account for the symmetry of the stress tensor and of the strain tensor, right? So we have that tau ij is equal to tau ji, correct? We have this symmetry, and we also have epsilon ij is equal to epsilon gi, correct? So these are the symmetries that are present, and so from that we get thatCijkl is Cjikl andCijkl is equal toCijlk. Okay, so these are what are known as minor symmetries. So these are what are known as minor symmetries. So actually, I mean, instead of trying to show this in some rigorous way, we will just write it in a matrix form, and then it will become obvious. Huh? So here, let us just write this set of equations in a matrix form, and so if I write this as let's say tau 1 1, tau 2 2, tau 3 3, tau 1 2, tau 2 3, and tau 1 3. Correct. So this is equal to. So let me just erase this particular part here, and we can write this as some C11, C12 up to C16, let us say, and similarly here C61 up to C66 times this will be epsilon xx, epsilon 11, epsilon 22, epsilon 33, gamma 12, gamma 23, gamma 13. Okay, so that is the. So because there are only 6 independent components for the stress tensor, and because there are only 6 independent components for the strain tensor, we can write it in this particular matrix form. So basically this is a 6 by 6 matrix that is multiplying the strain expressed in this particular form to give you the stress. So here this 6 by 6 means there are 36 components, right, in the stress in the constitutive matrix here, right. So basically what has happened is that so because of this, so you will see that actually CIJKL originally had 81 components, right, 81 components, but since CIJKL is CJIKL and CIJKL is equal to CIJLK. Okay, so because of these minor symmetries, we have now shown that actually there are only 36 independent components. So only 36 independent components. Independent components here. Right. And so we can make a even further reduction here. So we will assume. So we'll assume also major symmetry. Okay. So these are what are known as minor symmetries, right? So this we have already said. So these are these two are what are known as minor symmetries. And now let us assume major symmetry also. Assume major symmetry. So major symmetry means that CIJKL is equal to CKLIJ. Okay, so what that means is that basically this is symmetric about this particular diagonal here. So that means now you will have only 21 independent components, right? Because it is so 6 plus 5 plus 4 and so on up to 1. So that is 21 independent components, right? So here, because we are assuming this major symmetry, because of that, you also have that the 36. So because of this, so 36 independent components. Reduced to 21 independent components. Reduced to 21 independent. So if we make this assumption about major symmetry, then the most general form of the constitutive relation, of this linear constitutive relation, will have 21 independent material constants. Okay, so these are all material constants, so which can vary from material to material, right? So, but even this is very complicated, so we will make a further assumption that we will assume that the material is isotropic now. Okay, so isotropic means that basically the properties are the same in all directions. Okay, so let us just make this further assumption now, and then we will see that these 21 independent components will reduce to only 2 independent components. Okay, so that is the reduction now that will happen if we assume isotropic. So let me just introduce this particular assumption here. Yes, so for an isotropic material, or an isotropic material, so that means here the properties are the same in all directions. In that case, the 21 constants reduce to only 2 independent constants. Okay, so these 2 independent constants will be your Young modulus and the Poisson ratio, which you are already familiar with, right? Or alternatively, you can also express them in terms of the Lame parameters. So we will introduce what are these. So these are lambda and mu. Those are known as Lame parameters. So we will introduce that also. But at this particular stage, right now, let us just take these 2 independent components here. Fine. So what do we mean by isotropic? Okay, so this, so suppose if I take a bar, correct, like this, and now we are looking at the constitutive properties at a particular point, right? So we are saying that whether you are considering the constitutive properties in this direction or in this direction or in this direction or in any direction, the properties are the same. Okay, so suppose let us take an example that suppose if there are fibers that are running through this, right? Like in a composite material, you must be familiar. So you have some fibers that are running through this. Then you will see that now the constitutive property along this particular direction will be different than the constitutive properties along this particular direction. And so this is an example of a material that is not isotropic. But normal, usual materials, you will see that which don't have any fibers embedded and things like that. We can for example, any ductile material, steel, aluminum, whatever, copper. Typically, we can make the assumption of isotropy here. So one should not confuse between isotropy and homogeneity. Okay, so so when we say that a material is inhomogeneous, we are talking of the properties being different at different points. So here, so this is an example of a material that is not isotropic. But now let me give you an example of a material that is not homogeneous. So suppose if I have copper and suppose if I have steel, right? So this is an example of a material that is inhomogeneous. So this here is anisotropic, and here this is a inhomogeneous, homogeneous. So when we are talking about this isotropy or anisotropy, we are looking at the constitutive property at a given point in different directions. Okay, whereas here when we are talking of an inhomogeneous material, we are looking at the constitutive properties at different points in the structure. Okay, so we should not confuse between anisotropy and inhomogeneity. They are 2 totally different concepts. So you can have a material that is anisotropic but homogeneous, and you can have a material that is inhomogeneous but isotropic. Okay, so these are two totally independent properties, and one should not confuse between anisotropy and inhomogeneity. So to summarize, when we are talking about isotropy or anisotropy, we are talking of the constitutive behavior at a given point in different directions. And when we are talking about inhomogeneity, we are talking about the constitutive behavior at different points in the structure. Okay, so these are two, as I said, these are two independent concepts, and one should not confuse between these two different concepts here. Fine. So now actually in this course we will be dealing only with this isotropic case. So because that is the simplest case, and so only these two independent components, and so we can reduce now the constitutive relation to something much simpler. So then we don't have to deal with these 21 components in the general framework anymore. So we'll just have to deal with these two constants here. So let us see what the constitutive relation is in the case of an isotropic material. So for an isotropic material, now isotropic material will have thatCijkl is equal to lambda times delta Ij delta Kl plus mu times delta Ik delta Jl plus delta Il delta Jk. Okay, so now where does this come from? So the proof of this is quite complicated. Okay, so basically we are trying to say that the constitutive behavior is the same in all directions, and then from that we will get that the most general form of a constitutive relation that is the same in all directions is this particular constitutive relation. So we will not get into the proof of this. As I said, the proof is quite complicated, so we will just accept this. Okay, so then now if I substitute this particular form of the constitutive relation in the into this equation,Cijkl epsilon Kl, correct? So then what I will get is that tau Ij is equal to lambda times epsilon Kk times delta Ij plus 2 mu times epsilon Ij. Okay, so this is so actually throughout this course we will be focusing only on this. So as you can see, this is very simple. Now we no longer have to deal with theCijkl anymore. So from this point onwards, we will simply assume that the material is isotropic. Okay, so this entire course will not deal with the case of the more complicated situation where there are 21 constants or of those kinds of stuff. So this can also be written in a tensorial form here. This can be written as, let us see here, so this is tau is equal to lambda times trace of epsilon times identity plus 2 mu times epsilon. Okay, so the same relation, whatever I have written in the initial notation, now I am writing it in this particular tensorial form here. So this trace of epsilon is this epsilon kk, that is epsilon 11 plus epsilon 22 plus epsilon 33. So that is the trace of epsilon. Then the delta ij, we have already seen, that is the canonical delta. So they are just the components of the identity tensor, and then epsilon ij is simply this one. So this lambda and mu are what are known as Lame parameters. Lame constants or Lame parameters, Lame constants. Okay. And so these Lame constants will obviously be linked to the E and the nu. Okay, so whatever you have learned in your strength of materials courses, where the constitutive relation is expressed in terms of E and nu. So just to give an example, you have probably seen this kind of a constitutive relation, right? 1 by E times tau xx minus mu times tau yy plus tau zz, right? You have probably seen this kind of a constitutive relation in your strength of materials courses. And then similarly for epsilon yy, and then you will have gamma xy is equal to tau xy by g, okay, where g is the shear quantity. So you have already seen this kind of constitutive relation. So actually this is just the inverse of this particular thing, and so the lambda and the mu will be linked to the E and mu. Okay, so either you can write the constitutive relation in terms of E and mu in this particular manner, or you can write the constitutive relation in terms of the Lamé parameters in terms of this relation here. So if I want to write the strain stress relation, then it is easier to write it in terms of E and mu. But if I want to write the stress strain relation, then it is easier to write it in terms of lambda and mu. So of course, as I said that you can always now substitute for lambda and mu in terms of E and mu and write this entire relation in terms of E and mu also. But the expression becomes more complicated or cumbersome, and so we try to stick to this particular relation here. Yes. So so if you now substitute this constitutive relation into your balance of linear momentum, then you will get what are known as the Navier equations of elasticity. Okay, so let us look at that now. So substitute. So let me call this as star. So substituting star now. Substituting star into del dot tau plus rho b is equal to rho times del square u by del t square. Correct? So that if we substitute that, then you will get that rho times del square u by del t square. So this is keeping capital X fixed. So let me just note that this is capital X fixed. So this is equal to lambda plus mu times del of del dot u plus mu times del square u plus rho times p. Okay, so if you substitute this into this equation del dot tau and then carry out some manipulation, then these are the equations that you will get. So just to write this in indicial notation, if I write this as rho times del square ui by del t square, keeping capital X fixed, is equal to lambda plus mu times del by del xi of del dot u plus mu times del square ui plus rho times bi. Okay, so you can write this for the three individual components in this particular way here. So so you can see that here actually this is a set of three partial differential equations, right? And so that is evident when I write it in initial notation, because I is a counter that runs from 1 to 3, right? So this is actually a vectorial equation, but you can already see that to solve this set of equations is going to be very complicated, right? Because it's a set of coupled partial differential equations. So that means the u1, u2, u3 will occur in the first equation, in the second equation, and in the third equation. I mean, it would have been nice if the first equation involved only u1, second one involved only u2, and the third one involved only u3. Then it would have been an uncoupled set of equations. But you can see that actually it is a coupled set of equations, right? It's a coupled set of partial differential equations, and so it is a very, very difficult task to try to solve this for any arbitrary setup here. Okay, so we'll talk about techniques about how to solve this when we want to solve particular problems in elasticity. But at this stage, we are just trying to pose this particular problem here. So these equations, so let me just give you the name of these things. So this is known as the Navier equations of elasticity. So these are known as the Navier equations of elasticity. Right? So this is the set of three coupled partial differential equations. So let me write that here. So these are three coupled partial differential equations. Right? Partial and differential equations. Right? Yes. So fine. Okay. Okay. I think we'll stop at this particular stage.